The text message glowed on my phone screen like a knife to the chest. It was just an experiment, Kim Han. I wanted to know what it felt like with a male Omega. I'm not actually into men. I stared at those words until they blurred, my hands trembling around the device. 3 years. 3 years of my life given to someone who saw me as nothing more than a curiosity. A checkbox on some twisted bucket list. Park Miho. My alpha. Or at least I thought he was mine. The cafe around me buzzed with life. Couples laughing, friends chatting, the hiss of the espresso machine, but I felt like I was underwater, drowning in humiliation. My Omega instincts, usually so carefully controlled, writhed beneath my skin. The bond one thought we'd been building was nothing but a lie. I was 23 years old, and I'd just discovered that the person I'd trusted with everything had been pretending the entire time. My phone buzzed again. Another message from him. You're a great guy, really? But I met someone. A female beta. It's more natural. Natural. The word made bow rise in my throat. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. The other patrons glanced at me, but I didn't care. I couldn't breathe in here. Couldn't think. My carefully constructed life, the one where I was loved, where I belonged to someone, had just shattered into 1,000 pieces. Outside, Seoul's neon lights painted the wet streets in shades of pink and blue. It had rained earlier, and the air smelled of petrichor and exhaust fumes. I walked without direction, my designer coat doing little against the chill seeping into my bones. I'd always been told I was beautiful. With my pale skin, delicate features, warm brown eyes, and naturally red lips, I turned heads wherever I went. My short brown hair was styled perfectly as always. But what good was beauty when the person who was supposed to cherish it had been lying the entire time? My Omega nature made everything worse. We felt things more deeply, bonded more intensely. And I had bonded to Miho, given him everything, only to discover I was nothing but a novelty. I found myself outside a bar, one of those upscale places in Gangnam where the wealthy came to forget their problems. The doorman recognized the cut of my clothes and waved me in without question. Inside it was all dark wood and amber lighting, the kind of place that smelled like expensive whiskey and bad decisions. Perfect. Soju, I told the bartender, sliding onto a stool. Keep them coming. He raised an eyebrow. I looked young even for 23, but poured the first shot without comment. The liquor burned going down, but I welcomed it. Anything to numb this ache in my chest. 1 shot became 3. 3 became 6. The world started to soften around the edges, the sharp pain dulling into something more manageable. Around me the bar's clientele shifted. Businessmen in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, a few other Omegas trying to look confident in a space designed for alphas. Rough night? I glanced at the woman next to me, a beta with kind eyes. I nodded but didn't elaborate. Heartbreak, she guessed. Something like that. She patted my hand sympathetically before returning to her own drink, and I was grateful she didn't push. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted to forget. By the 10th shot I was definitely drunk. The room tilted pleasantly, and for the first time in hours, I wasn't thinking about Miho's betrayal. I wasn't thinking about anything except the warmth spreading through my veins. I paid my tab with fumbling fingers and stumbled toward the exit. The doorman asked if I needed a taxi, but I waved him off. My hotel was nearby, one of those luxury places my family's money afforded me. I just needed to get there, collapse into bed, and let oblivion take me. The lobby was a blur of marble and gold. I made it to the elevator, pressed a button, was it 15? 17? And leaned against the wall as it ascended. When the doors opened, I lurched down the hallway, squinting at the room numbers. They swam before my eyes. 1507, 1509, 1511. My key card beeped against the lock. Green light. I pushed the door open and stumbled inside, not bothering to turn on the lights. The room was dark, cool, smelling faintly of something expensive and masculine. Wait, my room didn't smell like this. Before the thought could fully form, I sensed movement. A presence. My Omega instincts flared. There was an alpha here. No, not an alpha. Something more. Something that made every nerve in my body stand at attention. An enigma. The rarest designation, rarer even than Omegas. More powerful than alphas, more dominant, more everything. And I just stumbled into his room. Who the hell are you? The voice came from the darkness, deep and cold as winter frost. I should have run. Should have apologized and fled. But the alcohol in my system, the heartbreak, the desperate need to feel something other than pain, it all collided into one terrible, perfect decision. Someone who wants to forget, I heard myself say. A lamp clicked on and I finally saw him. He was sitting in an armchair by the window, a glass of whiskey in one hand, looking at me like I was an interesting problem to solve. Late 40s, maybe, with sharp features that might have been cruel if they weren't so devastatingly handsome. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. His eyes were the color of smoke, assessing me with an intensity that made my breath catch. He wore a dress shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that spoke of disciplined strength. Everything about him radiated power, control, authority. Leo. I didn't know his name then, but I would never forget it after. "You're drunk," he observed, his voice carrying no judgment, only statement of fact. "Very," I agreed, swaying slightly. "And you're?" "In my own hotel room," he finished. "Which you've broken into." The door opened. I gestured vaguely behind me. Green light. His eyes narrowed. "Wrong floor, I assume." I should have left. Everything about this man screamed danger, not the physical kind, but the kind that gets under your skin and changes you. But I was drunk, heartbroken, and staring at the most devastating man I'd ever seen. "I don't want to go back to my room," I said, the words tumbling out. "I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. I don't want to think about how I wasted 3 years on someone who saw me as an experiment." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. He set down his whiskey glass with deliberate care. "You're an Omega. Not a question. And you're an enigma." I took a step closer, my Omega instincts purring at his scent, cedar and smoke and something darkly magnetic. "I can feel it. Then you should know better than to be in here with me." His voice had dropped lower, taking on an edge that made heat pool in my stomach. "Especially drunk and vulnerable. Maybe I don't want to know better tonight." I was close enough now to see the way his jaw tightened, the muscle ticking there. "Maybe I want to feel something other than worthless." "You're not worthless." The words came out sharp, almost angry. "No." I laughed, the sound bitter. "My alpha just told me I was an experiment. 3 years and I was nothing but a curiosity. I wanted to know what it felt like with a male Omega." I quoted, the words like poison on my tongue. Well, now he knows, and apparently it wasn't worth staying for. Before we dive into this heartwarming, emotional, slow burn romance Omegaverse story, note, this is an original work of Milliflex channel. If seen in another channel that is not Milliflex, please report that channel for copyright and impersonation. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. Lee Young stood, and suddenly the room felt much smaller. He was tall, several inches taller than my 5'9", and built like someone who took care of himself. Not bulky but solid. Strong. "Your alpha is a fool," he said quietly. The compliment, delivered in that cold, matter-of-fact tone, hit harder than any passionate declaration would have. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them back furiously. "I don't want sympathy," I said. "I want—" "What do you want?" He was close now, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. They were like storm clouds, swirling with something I couldn't quite name. The truth spilled out, raw and desperate. "I want to forget. I want to feel desired, not like an experiment. I swallowed hard. "I want someone to want me because they can't help themselves, not because they're curious." "You're drunk," he repeated, but his hand came up, fingers ghosting along my jaw. The touch was feather-light, testing. "And young." 23, I breathed. "Old enough." "I'm 46, he said, as if that should make me reconsider. "I don't care." For a long moment we stood there, the air between us crackling with tension. I could see the war playing out behind his eyes, the logical part of him that knew this was a bad idea, and something else. Something darker and more primal. "If I do this," he said slowly, "I don't do gentle. I don't do sweet. And I don't do relationships." "Good," I said, my heart racing. "Because I don't want any of that. I just want one night where I'm not thinking about him." His eyes searched mine, looking for what? Hesitation. Fear. Whatever he was looking for, he must not have found it, because his hand slid from my jaw to the back of my neck, fingers threading through my hair. "Last chance to leave," he murmured. Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. It was nothing like kissing Miho. This was fire and fury, desperate and demanding. His lips were firm, skilled, taking control of the kiss within seconds. When his tongue swept into my mouth, I made a sound I'd never heard myself make, needy and broken and real. He tasted like expensive whiskey and something inherently him. His free hand found my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I could feel the heat of his body through our clothes. Every Omega instinct I had was screaming at me. This was dangerous, this was an enigma, this could end badly, but I didn't care. I needed this. Needed him. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His eyes had darkened to charcoal, pupils blown wide. "Bedroom?" he said, his voice rough. Now. He led me through the suite, because of course it wasn't just a room, it was a massive suite with a living area and a bedroom that probably cost more per night than most people's monthly rent. The bed was enormous, dressed in crisp white linens that looked absurdly pristine. Not for long. Lee Young turned to face me and the look in his eyes made my knees weak. This close, I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the silver in his hair. He was older, yes, but God, he wore it well. There was something about a man who knew exactly who he was, who moved through the world with absolute confidence. "Take off your coat," he commanded, and the authority in his voice went straight through me. I shrugged out of my designer coat, letting it fall to the floor. Underneath, I wore a black silk shirt. Miho had always said it brought out my eyes, and tailored slacks. I watched Lee Young's gaze travel over me, assessing, appreciating. "You're beautiful," he said, and somehow coming from him, it didn't feel like a line. "But I suspect you know that." "Beauty didn't keep him," I said before I could stop myself. His expression darkened. Then he was more of a fool than I thought. He stepped closer, his hands going to the buttons of my shirt. "Forget him. For tonight he doesn't exist." He undid each button with deliberate slowness, his knuckles brushing against my skin, and I shivered despite the warmth of the room. When my shirt hung open, he pushed it off my shoulders, letting it join my coat on the floor. His hands were warm against my skin as they traced the lines of my torso. I wasn't muscular, Omegas rarely were, but I was lean, toned from occasional gym visits and good genetics. "Perfect," he murmured, almost to himself. Then his mouth was on my neck, lips and teeth and tongue finding the sensitive spot where it met my shoulder. I gasped, my hands flying up to grip his shoulders. He sucked hard enough to leave a mark, and the possessive claiming of it sent electricity down my spine. "Is this what you wanted?" he asked against my skin. "To be marked?" "Yes," I breathed. He hummed in approval, his hands sliding down to my belt. "Then let me give you what you need." What followed was a blur of sensation. Clothes disappearing, hands exploring, mouths tasting. He was patient despite the urgency thrumming between us, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch into his touch. When we finally fell onto that enormous bed, I was already trembling. He positioned himself above me, his weight a delicious pressure, and looked down at me with those storm cloud eyes. "Last chance," he said again. "After this, there's no going back." "I don't want to go back," I told him honestly. "I want this. I want you." Something in his expression shifted, satisfaction, perhaps, or triumph, and then he kissed me again, deep and claiming. His hands were everywhere, and I lost myself in the sensation of being wanted, being desired, being consumed by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. The alcohol made everything hazy, dreamlike, but it didn't dull the pleasure. If anything, it sharpened it, removing my inhibitions and leaving only raw need. When he finally moved inside me, I cried out, my fingers digging into his shoulders. "Look at me," he commanded, and I forced my eyes open to meet his. "I want to see you fall apart." And I did. With him, I shattered into 1,000 pieces, his name on my lips like a prayer or a curse. He followed me over the edge, his control finally breaking, and for those few perfect moments, I forgot everything except the feel of him, the sound of our ragged breathing, the way our bodies fit together like they'd been made for this. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the ruined sheets, my head on his chest, his hand absently stroking my hair. I could feel his heartbeat beneath my ear, steady and strong. "I never do this," he said into the darkness. "Do what?" "This. Picking up drunk strangers who stumble into my hotel room." I smiled against his skin. "I'm not sure picking up is accurate." I literally broke in. His chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "True." His hand stilled in my hair. "What's your name?" "Kim Han." "Lee Young." We lay there in comfortable silence, and despite everything, the alcohol, the bad decisions, the fact that I just slept with a complete stranger, I felt oddly peaceful. For the first time in hours, I wasn't thinking about Miho's betrayal. I wasn't thinking about anything except the warmth of the man beside me. "You should sleep," Lee Young said softly. "You're going to have a hell of a hangover." I meant to argue, meant to say something clever, but exhaustion was pulling at me. The combination of alcohol, emotional devastation, and the most intense physical experience of my life had left me completely drained. I drifted off with his fingers still in my hair, his heartbeat a steady rhythm beneath my ear, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept without nightmares. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and a pounding headache that felt like someone was using my skull as a drum. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came flooding back. Miho's texts. The bar. The wrong hotel room. Leon. Oh God. Leon. I sat up too quickly and immediately regretted it as the room spun. I was alone in the bed, still naked, the sheets tangled around my waist. On the nightstand, someone had left a glass of water and 2 aspirin next to a note written in sharp, angular handwriting. Had to leave for a meeting. Help yourself to whatever you need. The shower has excellent water pressure. LJ. I stared at that note, unsure what to feel. Relief that I didn't have to face him immediately? Disappointment that he'd left without saying goodbye? Embarrassment at everything I'd said and done the night before? All of the above, apparently. I took the aspirin and drank the entire glass of water, then forced myself out of bed. My clothes were scattered across the floor, another reminder of my spectacularly poor decision-making. I gathered them up, trying not to think about how Lee Young had removed each piece. The bathroom was pure luxury, all marble and gleaming chrome. True to his note, the shower did have excellent water pressure. I stood under the hot spray for a long time, letting it wash away the physical remnants of the night before even as the memories remained crystal clear. What had I been thinking? The problem was I hadn't been thinking at all. I'd been feeling hurt, angry, desperate, and I'd made a choice that was completely unlike me. I was usually careful, controlled, the kind of Omega who planned everything and never took risks. But last night with Lee Young, I touched my neck, feeling the tender spots where he'd marked me. The possessiveness of it should have bothered me. Instead, it sent a confusing flutter through my stomach. After my shower, I got dressed, minus my shirt which had somehow ended up torn. I borrowed one of Lee Young's from the closet. It smelled like him, cedar and smoke, and was too big on me but wearable. I needed to get back to my room before anyone saw me doing the walk of shame in a stranger's clothes. I was almost to the door when I noticed my phone on the coffee table, battery dead. I must have dropped it at some point. There was a charger on the desk. Of course this was the kind of suite that had everything, so I plugged it in, intending to wait just long enough to power it on. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications. More texts from Miho that I deleted without reading. Several from my best friend Yuna demanding to know where I was. And one email that made my blood run cold. Welcome to JH Corporation. We're excited to have you join our team. Your orientation begins Monday at 9 a.m. Please report to the executive floor. Monday. Today was Monday. I'd been so consumed with Miho's betrayal that I'd completely forgotten. Today was my first day at my new job. The position I'd worked so hard to get, the opportunity that was supposed to launch my career. I checked the time. 8:47 a.m. No, I muttered, grabbing my things. I could make it. My room was just 2 floors down. I could change into proper clothes, fix my hair, and still make it on time if I hurried. I ran. The executive floor of JH Corporation's headquarters was impressive. All glass and steel and understated elegance. I'd made it with 3 minutes to spare, dressed in my best suit, hair styled, looking every inch the professional young Omega ready to start his career. Never mind that underneath this polished exterior, I was still wearing marks from a stranger's mouth and carrying the memory of the most reckless night of my life. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where other new hires were gathering. I recognized a few faces from the interview process. Other Omegas and Betas, all young and ambitious, all eager to prove themselves. Kim Han. Yuna appeared at my elbow, her Beta energy bouncing with excitement. She was the only person I knew here, having joined the company a month earlier. I was so worried when you didn't answer my texts. Where were you last night? Long story, I muttered. Tell you later. Before she could press, the door opened and an HR representative entered, smiling brightly. Welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you joining the JH Corporation family. Before we begin the formal orientation, our CEO wanted to personally welcome our new team members. Please give a warm greeting to Mr. Lee Young. The world tilted. No, it couldn't be. But it was. Lee Young walked into the conference room and it was definitely him. The same sharp features, the same silver-threaded hair, the same storm cloud eyes. He looked every inch the powerful CEO in his perfectly tailored suit, radiating authority and control. His gaze swept over the room, professional and detached, until it landed on me. For one brief, electric moment our eyes met. I watched recognition flare in his expression, quickly masked behind corporate neutrality. But I'd seen it. He knew exactly who I was. The man I'd slept with last night wasn't just some stranger in a hotel. He was my new boss. My Enigma boss. And from the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, he was just as shocked to see me as I was to see him. This was going to be a disaster. Lee Young recovered faster than I did, his expression smoothing into corporate pleasantness as he addressed the room. His voice was the same one that had commanded me last night, but now it was carefully modulated for a professional setting. Welcome to JH Corporation, he said. We're a company built on innovation, integrity, and excellence. Each of you was selected because you demonstrated exceptional potential. We expect great things from you. His eyes didn't linger on me again, but I felt the weight of his awareness anyway. My Omega instincts were going haywire, recognizing him, wanting to respond to his presence. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to project calm I didn't feel. You'll be assigned to various departments based on your skills and the company's needs, he continued. Work hard, contribute meaningfully, and you'll find JH Corporation rewards talent. Pause. Any questions? Several hands went up and he fielded them with practiced ease. I didn't raise my hand. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to process the fact that I'd slept with my CEO. That I'd begged him to. No, not thinking about that right now. When the Q&A ended, Lee Young excused himself with a nod to the HR representative. As he turned to leave, his eyes found mine one more time, and the look he gave me was unreadable. A warning? An acknowledgement? I couldn't tell. Then he was gone and I could breathe again. Wow, Yuna whispered beside me. He's even more intimidating in person. They say he's brilliant but ruthless. Built this company from nothing and crushed anyone who got in his way. Ruthless, I repeated faintly. But fair, supposedly. If you're good at your job, he'll recognize it. If you're not. She made a cutting gesture across her throat. Anyway, isn't he gorgeous? I mean, for an older guy. If I were into enigmas, I'd... Yuna, I cut her off. Please stop. She looked at me strangely. You okay? You've been weird since you got here. Just nervous, I lied. New job jitters. The HR representative began explaining our assignments. I barely heard my own, something about the marketing department reporting to a Park G1, because my mind was racing. What was I going to do? Should I quit? Request a transfer? Pretend last night never happened? That last option seemed impossible. I could still feel where he touched me, still taste him on my lips. And worse, I wanted more. Even knowing who he was, what a monumental mistake this could be for my career, some traitorous part of me wanted to experience that again. Kim Han. The HR rep was looking at me expectantly. Yes, sorry? I said your workstation is ready. Someone will show you to your desk. I followed the others out of the conference room in a daze. The marketing department was on the 35th floor, an open space full of cubicles and busy people. My desk was near a window with a view of Seoul's skyline. Under other circumstances, I would have been thrilled. This was everything I'd worked for, a position at a prestigious company, good pay, room for advancement. But all I could think about was that Lee Young was somewhere in this building, and I had no idea what he was thinking or planning to do about our situation. I tried to focus on the onboarding materials, the introductions to my new coworkers, the tour of the facilities. I smiled and nodded and said all the right things, but inside I was screaming. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My office. 6 p.m. Don't be late. OJ. My heart stopped, then started racing double time. He wanted to see me. Alone. In his office. I should refuse. Should set boundaries immediately. Should do anything except show up. But at 5:55 p.m., I found myself in the elevator, ascending to the executive floor. Lee Young's office was exactly what I expected. Large, minimalist, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. A massive desk that probably cost more than a car. Shelves lined with awards and books. Everything screamed power and success. He was standing by the window when I entered, hands in his pockets, looking out at Seoul. He didn't turn immediately, and I used the moment to study him. In the office in daylight, he should have seemed less dangerous. Instead, he seemed more so. This was his domain, his territory. Close the door, he said without turning around. I did, my hand trembling slightly on the handle. The click of the lock engaging seemed very loud. Finally, he turned to face me. In the fading light, his features were all sharp angles and shadows. This is unexpected. That's one word for it, I managed. You didn't know I own JH Corporation. No. I knew the CEO's name was Lee Young, but it's not exactly an uncommon name. I never looked at photos. I'd been too busy preparing for interviews, crafting my resume, trying to forget about Miho. Did you know who I was? How would I? You were a drunk stranger who broke into my hotel room. He moved closer and I forced myself not to step back. Though I'll admit I should have been more careful. Should have asked more questions. We were both careless, I said quietly. Yes. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same scent that had surrounded me last night. The question is, what do we do about it now? My heart was pounding. What do you want to do about it? What I want, he said slowly, and what's appropriate are two very different things. You work for me now, Kim Han. There are rules about this sort of thing. Power dynamics, potential harassment claims, company policy. I know. I swallowed hard. I should probably request a transfer. Or resign. Is that what you want? The question hung between us, loaded with meaning. Because we both knew he wasn't just asking about my job. I worked hard to get this position, I said instead of answering directly. This company, this opportunity, it matters to me. Then you'll stay. It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't a suggestion either. And we'll pretend last night never happened. You're a new employee, I'm your CEO, and we maintain completely professional boundaries. No one needs to know. It was the logical solution. The safe solution. The one that protected both our careers. So why did it feel like losing something precious? Okay, I heard myself say. Professional boundaries. Good. But he didn't move away and neither did I. The air between us felt charged, dangerous. Though I should tell you, it's going to be difficult. What is? Pretending I don't know exactly how you sound when you come apart. Pretending I can't still taste you. Pretending I don't want to do it again. Heat flooded through me, my Omega instincts responding immediately to the desire in his voice. Mr. Lee. Young, he corrected. When we're alone, you can call me Young. We shouldn't be alone, I managed to say even as I swayed slightly toward him. No, we shouldn't. His hand came up, fingers ghosting along my jaw exactly like they had last night. But here we are. I should pull away. Should reinforce those professional boundaries we just agreed to. Instead, I leaned into his touch, my eyes fluttering closed. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible, he agreed, and then he was kissing me. It was just as devastating as I remembered. His mouth claiming mine with an authority that made my knees weak. I gripped his shoulders to stay upright, kissing him back with equal desperation. All the tension of the day, all the fear and confusion and want, poured into that kiss. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. His eyes had darkened to that charcoal color I remembered from last night. We can't do this, he said, but his hands were still on my waist. I know. You work for me. The power imbalance alone. I know, I repeated. And I don't do relationships. I don't do attachment. What happened last night was supposed to be one time, nothing more. I know. My voice came out smaller than I intended. I'm not asking for a relationship. I'm not asking for anything. That was a lie and we both knew it. I was asking for everything I shouldn't want. More of his touch, more of his attention, more of the way he made me forget every sensible thought I'd ever had. He studied my face, searching for something. You should go, he finally said, stepping back. Before I do something else we'll both regret. I nodded, not trusting my voice. My lips still tingled from his kiss, my body still humming with need. But he was right. We'd already crossed too many lines. I made it to the door before he spoke again. Kim Han. I turned back. Stay away from me, he said, and there was something almost desperate in his tone. Please. For both our sakes. Staying away from Lee Young proved to be harder than either of us anticipated. The problem was that JH Corporation wasn't that large. We crossed paths constantly, in elevators, in the cafeteria, in meetings. And every time I saw him, every time our eyes met across a conference room, I felt that pull. That magnetic attraction that had made me stumble into his hotel room in the first place. He maintained his professional demeanor perfectly. To everyone else, I was just another employee. But I noticed the little things. The way his jaw tightened when I entered a room, the way his gaze would linger on me for a fraction too long before he looked away, the way his fingers would drum against his desk during meetings as if he was restraining himself from reaching for me. I wasn't any better. I'd catch myself staring at his hands and remembering how they'd felt on my skin. I'd hear his voice and remember how it had sounded, whispering dark promises against my ear. I'd see him laugh at something a colleague said and feel jealous of whoever had earned that rare smile. It was torture. A week into my new job, Yuna cornered me in the break room. Okay, spill. What's going on with you? Nothing's going on. Bullshit. You've been distracted all week. Is it Miho? Are you still upset about the breakup? I'd almost forgotten about Miho. The betrayal that had devastated me a week ago now seemed distant, almost trivial compared to the complication that was Lee Young. No, I said honestly. I'm over Miho. Then what? She leaned in conspiratorially. Is it someone here? Oh my God, it is. You met someone at the company. Yuna. Who is it? Is it that cute beta from accounting? Or, her eyes widened. It's not an alpha, is it? I know you just got out of that relationship, but please tell me you're not jumping right into another alpha situation. It's not an alpha, I said, which was technically true. Then who? I couldn't tell her. Couldn't tell anyone. So I deflected. It's complicated. And it's not going anywhere, so there's no point talking about it. She looked skeptical but thankfully didn't push. Fine. But if you need to talk. I know. Thanks, Yuna. That afternoon, I was summoned to a marketing strategy meeting on the executive floor. My boss, Park Ji-won, a competent beta woman in her 40s, wanted me to present some research I'd compiled on consumer trends. The conference room was full when I arrived. Department heads, senior managers, and at the head of the table, Lee Young. Of course. Our eyes met briefly as I set up my presentation, and I saw the same struggle I felt reflected in his gaze. Then his expression shuddered and he was all business. I gave my presentation, proud of the work I'd done, barely stumbling over my words despite being hyper-aware of his presence. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before people started asking questions. Lee Young's question came last. You've identified several emerging trends. Which one do you think represents the greatest opportunity for JH Corporation? It was a good question, a fair question, the kind any CEO might ask. But I heard the subtext beneath it, prove yourself. Show me you deserve to be here. I met his eyes squarely. The shift toward experiential marketing in the Omega demographic. Current research shows that Omegas, particularly young professionals, are tired of being marketed to based on traditional stereotypes. They want brands that see them as complete individuals, not just their designation. JH Corporation is uniquely positioned to lead this shift. Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe, or respect. Explain. So I did, laying out my analysis with confidence I didn't entirely feel. The room listened intently, and when I finished, Park Ji-won was beaming. Excellent work, Kim Han, she said. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. I agree, Lee Young added, his tone professionally neutral. Develop this concept further. I want a full proposal on my desk by the end of the month. It was a professional compliment, a career opportunity. But when our eyes met, I saw the heat beneath the corporate mask, and I knew he was thinking about other ways to reward my performance. The meeting ended and people filed out. I was gathering my materials when I realized I was alone in the room with him. You did well, he said quietly. Thank you. I meant what I said. I want that proposal. You'll have it. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Finally he spoke again. This is harder than I expected. What is? Staying away from you. He moved closer and I felt my pulse jump. Every time I see you, I remember. Don't, I interrupted. Please don't say it. Why not? Because if you say it, I'll think about it. And if I think about it, I'll want it. And we agreed. I know what we agreed. He was close enough now that I could feel his body heat. But agreements made in my office and what I actually want are two different things. What do you want? The question came out barely above a whisper. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and touched my face. His thumb traced my lower lip with devastating gentleness. I want to see if last week was a fluke. If it was just the alcohol and the circumstances, or if it's really as good as I remember. My breath caught. And if it is? Then we're both in trouble. This time when he kissed me, it was slow. Deliberate. A thorough exploration rather than desperate claiming. I melted into it, my hands coming up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, and I felt myself sinking into the same fire that had consumed us that first night. His hands slid down my back, pulling me flush against him, and I could feel every hard line of his body against mine. A sound in the hallway made us spring apart. We stood there, breathing hard, looking at each other with a mixture of desire and dismay. This can't keep happening, he said, but he didn't sound convinced. No, I agreed. It can't. You should go. I should. But I didn't want to. I wanted to lock the conference room door and let him take me apart right here, consequences be damned. Instead, I gathered my materials with shaking hands and walked toward the door. I made it halfway before he spoke again. Kim Han. I paused but didn't turn around. There's a business trip next month. Singapore. 5 days. I need someone from marketing to accompany me for client meetings. Pause. It should probably be Park Ji-won, but I'm going to request you instead. My heart stopped. 5 days. Alone with him in another city. Is that wise? I asked. Probably not. But I'm doing it anyway. His voice dropped lower. Unless you'd rather I didn't. I should say no. Should maintain those professional boundaries. Should do anything except agree to this incredibly dangerous proposition. Request me, I said, and walked out before I could change my mind. The month passed in a blur of work and tension. True to his word, Lee Young requested me for the Singapore trip, citing my innovative marketing concepts and fresh perspective. Park Ji-won was thrilled for me, seeing it as a sign of the CEO's confidence in my abilities. If only she knew. I threw myself into preparing for the trip, determined to prove I deserved to be there for professional reasons, not just personal ones. I refined my proposal, researched the Singapore clients, prepared presentations. When I wasn't working, I was trying not to think about what might happen once we were in another city, away from the office. Lee Young maintained his distance at work, but I felt his attention on me constantly. Occasionally, I'd look up from my desk to find him watching me through the glass walls of the conference room. Our eyes would meet, and the heat in his gaze would make my breath catch before he looked away. Yuna noticed. Okay, seriously, what is going on? You've been on edge for weeks. Just nervous about Singapore, I lied. You're going to do great. The CEO wouldn't have requested you if he didn't think you could handle it. She paused. Although between you and me, I'd be nervous too. Spending 5 days with Lee Young? That's intense. He's got a reputation for being demanding. I can handle demanding, I said, trying not to think about exactly how demanding he could be. The night before we left, I barely slept. I packed and repacked my suitcase trying to decide what to bring. Professional clothes for meetings, obviously. But what about after hours? Would we maintain boundaries, or would the distance from Seoul make it easier to give in to what we both wanted? I settled on packing both, business attire and something more casual, just in case. We took a company car to the airport, and the drive was exquisitely awkward. We sat in the back seat, careful not to touch, making stilted small talk about the weather and the meetings ahead. The driver probably thought we were strangers. If only. On the plane, first class, naturally we sat next to each other. Once we were airborne, Lee Young opened his laptop and started working. I did the same, trying to focus on my presentation notes. Nervous? He asked without looking up. A little, I admitted. Don't be. You're good at what you do. He glanced at me then. I wouldn't have brought you if I didn't believe that. Is that the only reason you brought me? The question hung between us. He closed his laptop slowly, giving me his full attention. No, he said quietly. It's not. But it's the one I can justify to the board if anyone asks. And the real reason? Because I wanted 5 days where I could see you without the entire office watching. Where maybe, just maybe, we could figure out what the hell this is between us. My heart was racing. And what if we can't figure it out? Then at least we'll have tried. He reached over, his hand covering mine on the armrest. I can't stop thinking about you, Kim Han. I've tried. God knows I've tried. But every time I see you, every time I hear your voice, I want. Young, I interrupted, very aware that we were on a plane surrounded by other passengers, even if first class gave us some privacy. He pulled his hand back, but his eyes stayed on mine. This trip is going to test every bit of self-control I have. Mine too, I confessed. For the rest of the flight, we worked in charged silence, both of us pretending we were thinking about business when really, we were counting down the hours until we landed in Singapore. The hotel was stunning, a luxury high-rise with a view of Marina Bay. The company had booked us separate rooms on the same floor, which seemed both prudent and dangerous. Dinner at 8, Lee Young said as we checked in. Business dinner with the clients. Were something impressive? Yes, sir, I said automatically, and watched his pupils dilate at the formal address. Don't, he said, his voice rough. Don't call me that unless you want me to forget every professional boundary I've ever had. Heat flooded through me. Noted. In my room, I showered and changed into one of my best suits, charcoal gray with a black shirt that made my eyes stand out. I styled my hair carefully, making sure I looked every inch the professional young executive. When I met Lee Young in the lobby, he was wearing a navy suit that fit him like a second skin. His eyes traveled over me appreciatively. You look good, he said. So do you. The business dinner was at an upscale restaurant overlooking the city. Our clients were a married alpha couple in their 50s who ran a major distribution company. They were charming, savvy, and clearly impressed with the proposal I'd prepared. JH Corporation is lucky to have such innovative young talent, the wife, Mrs. Chin, said to Lee Young. Kim Han's ideas about Omega-focused marketing are exactly what the market needs. I agree, Lee Young said, and the pride in his voice made something warm bloom in my chest. He's one of our rising stars. Over dinner we talked business, but underneath it all, I was hyper-aware of Lee Young beside me. The brush of his arm against mine. The way he'd refill my water glass without me asking. The heated glances when the clients weren't looking. By the time we said goodbye to the Chens and returned to the hotel, I was wound tight with tension. We stood in the hallway between our rooms, and neither of us moved to open our doors. That went well, Lee Young said. Yes. They're interested in expanding the partnership. That's good. Silence. He was looking at me like he was trying to memorize my face. I should let you get some rest. We have meetings all day tomorrow. Right. Rest. But neither of us moved. Kim Han. Do you want to come in? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Just to talk. Or have a drink. Or. If I come into your room, he said slowly, carefully, talking is the last thing we'll do. I know. And tomorrow we still have to work together. Still have to maintain professional boundaries. I know that too. He stared at me for a long moment and I watched the war playing out behind his eyes. Logic versus desire. Professionalism versus need. Finally he said, open your door. My hands were shaking as I used my key card. The lock clicked and we stepped inside. The door had barely closed behind us before he was kissing me, pressing me back against it with the weight of his body. This kiss was different from the ones before, hungrier, more urgent, like he'd been holding back for weeks and couldn't anymore. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. We shouldn't, he murmured against my lips even as his hands slid under my jacket. Probably not, I agreed, working the buttons of his shirt. This complicates everything. I don't care. That seemed to break the last of his restraint. He pulled back just long enough to shrug out of his jacket and loosen his tie, his eyes never leaving mine. Tell me to stop. Don't stop, I said. Please don't stop. What followed was a night that made our first time seem tame by comparison. He took his time, learning every inch of my body, finding places that made me gasp and moan and beg. And when he finally took me, it was with an intensity that left me shaking, crying out his name into the Singapore night. Afterward, we lay tangled together in my bed, sweaty and satisfied and facing the reality of what we'd just done. This changes things, he said quietly. I know. We can't keep this casual. Not anymore. I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. What are you saying? He met my eyes steadily. I'm saying that I want more than one night. More than a few stolen moments. I want. He trailed off, seeming to struggle with the words. I don't know exactly what I want, but I know I'm not ready to let this go. My heart was pounding. Your company policy. Fuck the policy. I'll figure it out. His hand came up to cup my face. Unless you don't want this. Tell me now, Kim Han. Tell me if this is just physical for you and I'll back off. I thought about lying. Thought about protecting myself from the inevitable heartbreak of wanting someone I couldn't fully have. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, I couldn't do it. It's not just physical, I admitted. It hasn't been since that first night. Something in his expression softened. Good. Because I have no idea how we're going to make this work, but I'm willing to try if you are. Even though you're my boss? Even though. We'll be discreet. We'll maintain boundaries at the office. But when it's just us. He pulled me down for a slow, deep kiss. When it's just us, you're mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have worried me. Instead, it made heat pool in my stomach all over again. And you're mine? I asked, needing to hear it. Yes, he said simply. I'm yours. We spent the rest of the night proving it to each other. The rest of the Singapore trip was a blur of business meetings and stolen moments. During the day we were the consummate professionals, CEO and junior executive, nothing more. But at night, one of us would slip into the other's room, and we'd lose ourselves in each other until dawn. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. I'd never felt this way about anyone, not even Miho. What I had with Lee Young was more intense, more consuming, more real than anything I'd experienced before. On our last night in Singapore, after a successful final meeting with the clients, we had dinner alone at the hotel restaurant. We sat across from each other talking about everything except work, our childhoods, our dreams, the strange paths that had led us to each other. I never expected this, Lee Young said, swirling the wine in his glass. At my age, I thought I'd figured out who I was, what I wanted. And then you stumbled into my hotel room and turned everything upside down. I'm sorry? I offered with a small smile. Don't be. He reached across the table to take my hand, a risky gesture even in the relatively private restaurant. You're the best mistake I've ever made. We went back to Seoul the next day and reality crashed down around us almost immediately. Back in the office we had to pretend. No lingering glances, no casual touches, no hint of anything beyond a professional relationship. It was agony. Yuna noticed immediately. Oh my God, something happened in Singapore. Nothing happened, I lied. Bullshit. You've got that glow. Did you meet someone there? A sexy Singaporean alpha? No, I said, which was technically true. Then what? Her eyes widened. Wait. Oh my God. It's someone here, isn't it? Someone who went to Singapore with you. But the only person who went with you was? She gasped. Kim Han, tell me you didn't. My face must have given me away because she grabbed my arm and dragged me into an empty conference room. You slept with Lee Young, she hissed. Arceo. Your boss. Kim Han, what were you thinking? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're sleeping with the CEO. She ran her hands through her hair. Oh God, this is bad. This is so bad. If anyone finds out, you could lose your job. He could lose his job. The company policy is very clear about relationships between superiors and subordinates. I know, I said miserably. But Yuna, it's not just sleeping together. It's more than that. I think I couldn't finish the sentence, but she understood. Her expression softened. You're falling for him. I think I already fell. She sat down heavily. Okay, we can work with this. You just have to be careful. Super careful. No one can know. I haven't told anyone but you. And you can't. Not until you figure out what to do about the conflict of interest. She looked at me seriously. Han, I love you, but you need to think about this. Age gap aside, designation aside, he's your boss. That power dynamic, it's complicated. I know. But when we're together, it doesn't feel like he has power over me. It feels like we're equals. Maybe when you're alone. But at work? He controls your career, your assignments, your future at this company. What if things go wrong between you? What if he fires you? Or what if people think you're getting special treatment because you're sleeping with him? All valid concerns. All things I'd thought about in my more rational moments. But when I was with Jung, rationality went out the window. We're being careful, I said. No one will find out. Famous last words. 2 weeks later, I was working late when Park Ji-won called me into her office. Her expression was serious and my heart sank. Kim Han, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Are you involved with Lee Young? The blood drained from my face. Why would you ask that? Because I've worked here for 15 years and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Because he requested you, a brand new employee, for a major business trip instead of senior staff. Because your work, while excellent, has been getting an unusual amount of his personal attention. She leaned back in her chair. I'm not stupid, Han. Neither is anyone else who's been paying attention. I thought about denying it. But Park Ji-won had always been kind to me and she deserved better than lies. Yes, I said quietly. We're involved. She closed her eyes briefly. How long? Since before I started working here. We met by accident before I knew who he was. That's something at least. Not that it matters much for the optics. She sighed. Han, I like you. You're talented, you work hard, and you have a real future in this industry. But this could destroy your career before it even starts. I know. Does he know that? Or is he too focused on what he wants to consider what this could cost you? It's not like that. He's not using me. We're trying to be careful. Careful isn't enough. This company has policies for a reason. If you two are going to continue this relationship, something has to change. Either you transfer to another department where he's not your direct superior, or he needs to recuse himself from any decisions involving your career. She looked at me seriously. Or you end it. The thought of ending things with Jung made my chest ache. But she was right. We couldn't keep going like this. What are you going to do? I asked. About knowing? For now, nothing. But Han, I won't be the last person to notice. You two need to make a decision before someone less sympathetic does. That night, I went to Jung's penthouse apartment for the first time. It was as impressive as I'd expected. All modern design and floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Seoul's glittering skyline. He took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. What happened? I told him about the conversation with Park Ji-won. Watched his expression darken as the reality of our situation sank in. She's right, he said finally. We can't keep this secret forever. And I won't let it damage your career. So what do we do? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. When he finally spoke, his voice was resolute. I'll transfer you to a different division. One where I'm not your direct supervisor. It'll still be complicated, I'm still the CEO, but at least there'll be some separation. People will wonder why I'm being transferred. Let them wonder. Your work speaks for itself. We'll frame it as a promotion, moving you to a position where your skills can be better utilized. And if people still suspect? Then we deal with it. He turned to face me, his expression fierce. Kim Han, I'm not giving you up. Not because of company policy, not because of what people might think. You're the first person in years who's made me feel something beyond work and obligation. I won't lose that. The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. I don't want to lose it either. Then we make it work. We're smart, we're careful, and we don't give anyone ammunition to use against us. He pulled me into his arms. I've built this company from nothing. I've faced hostile takeovers, market crashes, and countless challenges. I can handle some corporate gossip. I buried my face in his chest, breathing in his scent. Promise me something. Anything. If this ever becomes too much, if it ever threatens the company or your reputation, you'll tell me. You won't sacrifice everything for this. He tilted my chin up, his eyes serious. I won't sacrifice you either. We're in this together, Han. Whatever comes, we face it together. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And for the first time since Park Ji-won's warning, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. The transfer happened quickly. Within 2 weeks, I was moved to the Strategic Development Division. A lateral move that came with a small pay increase and a new boss, a competent alpha named Kang Min-jun who seemed to have no idea about my relationship with Lee Young. The change helped. At work, Young and I could interact without the same level of scrutiny. We were in different departments now, our professional relationship limited to occasional meetings and project collaborations. But it didn't stop the rumors. I heard he transferred Kim Han because they're sleeping together. I overheard one day in the bathroom. 2 betas from accounting gossiping while washing their hands. No way. Lee Young doesn't date employees. He doesn't really date anyone from what I've heard. Then why else would a brand new hire get transferred to strategic development? That's a cushy position. Maybe he's actually good at his job? Maybe. Or maybe he's good at other things. They laughed and I stayed frozen in the stall until they left, my face burning with humiliation. That night I told Young about it. We were at his apartment again. I spent most nights there now, going home to my own place only often enough to avoid suspicion. Let them talk, he said, pulling me into his arms. Your work is excellent. Anyone who actually looks at your performance reviews will see that. But what if they're right? What if people think I only got this position because I'm sleeping with you? Then they're idiots who don't know what they're talking about. His hand stroked through my hair soothingly. Han, you earned your place here. The transfer was to avoid conflicts of interest, not to give you special treatment. I know, but it still feels like... Like what? Like I'm proving Miho right. That being an Omega means I'm just someone's accessory. Someone's experiment. Young pulled back to look at me, his expression fierce. You are nothing like what Miho made you feel. You're brilliant, talented, and you've earned every bit of recognition you've received. Anyone who can't see that is blind. I wanted to believe him. But the whispers followed me everywhere. In meetings, I caught people exchanging glances. In the cafeteria, conversations would stop when I approached. Even Yuna, supportive as she was, looked worried. Maybe we should cool things off, I suggested one evening. Just for a while. Until the gossip dies down. No. Young's response was immediate and firm. But... No, Han. I won't hide what you mean to me because some people have small minds and smaller lives. He cupped my face in his hands. I'm 46 years old. I've spent years building this company, proving myself, playing by everyone else's rules. For once, I'm choosing what I want. And I want you. Even if it damages your reputation? My reputation can survive some gossip. What it can't survive is me giving up on the best thing that's ever happened to me because I was too cowardly to fight for it. His words melted something in my chest. You really mean that? Every word. He kissed me softly. But if you're not ready for this, if the pressure is too much, I'll understand. I won't pressure you to stay if this isn't what you want. I thought about it. Really thought about what I wanted. And I realized that despite the gossip, despite the complications, despite everything, I wanted this. Wanted him. I want to stay, I said. But Young, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. No more hiding, no more pretending. Let's just be honest about what we are. Are you sure? Once we go public, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. The next day, Young called a company-wide meeting. The entire staff crammed into the largest conference room, speculation running wild. Some thought we were announcing a merger. Others worried about layoffs. Young stood at the front of the room, commanding attention effortlessly. I stood near the back, my heart racing. Thank you all for coming, he began. I'll keep this brief. As many of you know, there have been rumors circulating about my personal life. Rather than let speculation continue, I'm addressing this directly. The room went completely silent. I am in a relationship with Kim Han from the Strategic Development Division. His eyes found mine across the room. This relationship began before he joined the company, and I have taken steps to ensure there is no conflict of interest in his professional capacity. His transfer to a different division was made specifically to maintain appropriate boundaries. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I felt every eye turn to look at me. Kim Han is an exceptional employee who has earned his position through merit and hard work. Anyone who suggests otherwise is welcome to review his performance evaluations and project contributions. I won't tolerate harassment or discrimination against him because of our relationship. His voice took on an edge of steel. This is my personal life. It doesn't affect how I run this company or the standards I hold everyone to. Are we clear? There were scattered nods and murmurs of assent. Good. Now get back to work. As people filed out, they stared at me, some with curiosity, some with judgment, a few with what might have been respect. I made my way through the crowd to where Jung was standing. That was bold, I said quietly. It was necessary. He didn't touch me, we were still in professional territory, but his eyes were warm. No more hiding, like you said. No more hiding, I agreed. The fallout was mixed. Some people were supportive, particularly the younger employees who saw our relationship as romantic rather than scandalous. Others were judgmental, whispering about professionalism and appropriate boundaries. Park Ji-won pulled me aside the next day. That took guts, she said. Both of you. Was it the right call? Time will tell. But at least now everyone knows where things stand. Just make sure you continue proving that you deserve to be here, Han. Work twice as hard, be twice as good. Don't give them any ammunition. I took her advice to heart. Over the next months, I threw myself into my work with renewed determination. I led successful projects, contributed innovative ideas, and slowly but surely, earned the respect of my colleagues based on my merits rather than my relationship. Jung and I maintained strict boundaries at work. No public displays of affection, no preferential treatment, nothing that could be construed as inappropriate. At the office he was my CEO and I was just another employee. But after hours at his apartment or occasionally at mine, we were just Jung and Han. Two people navigating a relationship that was complicated and unconventional but undeniably real. I never thought I'd do this, Jung admitted one night as we lay together in his bed. At my age I thought I was set in my ways. Too old for romance, too focused on work. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. You've changed me, Han. Made me remember there's more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings. You've changed me too, I said softly. Helped me see that I'm worth more than I thought I was. That being an Omega doesn't define me. Nothing defines you except who you choose to be. And who you choose to be is extraordinary. 6 months after we went public, Jung did something that shocked me. He called me into his office, a real meeting scheduled through proper channels, and when I arrived there was a lawyer there. What's going on? I asked, concerned. Sit down, Han. Jung's expression was serious but not upset. I've been thinking about the power dynamic issues in our relationship. You were right to be concerned about them. My heart sank. Was he ending this? So I've had my lawyer draw up some papers. Essentially, I'm creating a protection for you. If our relationship ends for any reason, you're guaranteed certain protections. A severance package, excellent references, assistance finding a new position if you want it. And I'm establishing a clear policy. I will never be involved in decisions about your salary, your promotions, or your career trajectory. All of that will be handled by an independent committee. I stared at him. You're protecting me from yourself? I'm protecting you from the power I have over your career. I never want you to feel trapped or obligated because you work for my company. This way, if you ever want to leave, whether the relationship ends or you just want a fresh start, you can do so without worrying about your future. Tears pricked at my eyes. Jung, I love you, he said simply. And because I love you, I need to make sure you have the freedom to choose to be with me, not because you feel you have to, but because you want to. It was the first time either of us had said those 3 words. They hung in the air, precious and profound. I love you too, I whispered. And I choose you. Every day I choose you. He came around the desk and pulled me into his arms, holding me like I was something precious. Then let's make this official. Not just at work. Everywhere. What do you mean? He pulled back slightly, his eyes serious. Move in with me. Properly. Not just spending nights at my place but actually living together. Build a life with me. You want me to move in? I want more than that, eventually. But let's start there. He smiled, and it transformed his usually stern face into something warm and beautiful. What do you say, Han? Want to wake up next to this old man every morning? I laughed through my tears. You're not that old. I'm 23 years older than you. And I don't care. I kissed him softly. Yes, I'll move in with you. I'll build a life with you. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. Even put up with my terrible morning moods? Even that. We sealed the agreement with a kiss that quickly turned heated. The lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably, reminding us we weren't alone, and we broke apart, laughing. That night, we celebrated our new beginning. And for the first time since I'd stumbled into that hotel room all those months ago, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I stood in our apartment adjusting my tie for the third time. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul sprawled out beneath us, the city lights twinkling like stars. You're going to wear that tie out before the ceremony even starts, Jung said, appearing behind me in the mirror. He was already dressed in his tuxedo, looking devastating as always. I'm nervous, I admitted. About what? You've presented to rooms of hundreds of people. You've closed multi-million-dollar deals. You've faced down hostile board members. What's scary about this? This is different. This is. I trailed off, gesturing helplessly at the small box on the dresser. Inside that box were 2 rings. Simple platinum bands that we'd chosen together. Tonight, at a private ceremony with close friends and family, we were making it official. After 2 years together, after weathering corporate gossip and family concerns and all the complications of our unconventional relationship, we were getting married. Jung's hands settled on my shoulders, warm and reassuring. Having second thoughts. Never. I turned to face him. I just want it to be perfect. It will be perfect because you'll be there. He kissed me softly. That's all that matters. You're such a romantic, I teased. Only for you. He adjusted my tie with expert fingers. There. Perfect. Just like you. Flatterer. Truth teller. His expression grew serious. Han, I know our relationship hasn't been easy. The age difference, the workplace complications, the public scrutiny. But I wouldn't change any of it because it led us here. To our wedding day? To this life we've built together. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible. I pulled him close, breathing in his familiar scent. Same. I love you, Jung. I love you too. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Now come on. We have a wedding to get to, and Yuna will kill us both if we're late. The ceremony was small and intimate, held at a beautiful venue overlooking the Han River. Only our closest friends and immediate family attended. My parents, who'd been skeptical at first but had grown to love Jung. His sister and her family. Yuna, who'd stood by me through everything. A handful of colleagues who'd become genuine friends. As I stood at the altar and watched Jung walk down the aisle toward me, I thought about how far we'd come. From that drunken, desperate night in a hotel room to this moment, planned, intentional, and full of joy. We'd faced challenges that would have broken most couples. The gossip had been brutal at times. Some people never fully accepted us. There were still whispers about propriety and power dynamics and age gaps. But we'd survived it all. Thrived even. I'd continued advancing in my career, earning promotions and respect through my own merit. Jung had stepped back from some of his CEO duties, bringing in a COO to help run the company so he could have more work-life balance. We'd created boundaries and protections, ensuring our relationship remained healthy and equal. Most importantly, we'd chosen each other. Every single day, through the easy times and the hard times, we'd chosen to be together. As we exchanged rings and said our vows, I looked into Jung's storm-cloud eyes and saw my future reflected there. A future filled with love, partnership, and possibility. I do, I said when it was my turn, my voice clear and strong. I do, Jung echoed, slipping the ring onto my finger with hands that trembled just slightly. When the officiant pronounced us married, Jung pulled me into a kiss that was both passionate and tender. Our guests cheered, and I heard Yuna's distinctive whistle above the applause. As we walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, I caught sight of Park Ji-won in the crowd. She gave me a nod and a smile, approval from the person who'd first warned me about the complications we'd face. At the reception, Jung made a toast. 2 years ago, a beautiful drunk young man stumbled into my hotel room and changed my life forever. He was heartbroken, desperate to forget, and completely captivating. I should have sent him away. Instead, I let him stay, and it was the best decision I've ever made. People laughed, and I felt my face heat with the memory. Han taught me that it's never too late to change, to grow, to open yourself to love even when it seems impossible. He's made me a better man, a better leader, and now, a better husband. So I'd like to propose a toast, to second chances, to unexpected love, and to the courage to choose happiness even when it's complicated. To second chances, everyone chorused, raising their glasses. Later that night, after the celebration had ended and we'd returned home, Jung pulled me onto the balcony. The city stretched out below us, and above, stars were just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Happy? He asked, his arms wrapped around me from behind. Deliriously, I said, leaning back against his chest. You? More than I have words for. He pressed a kiss to my neck, right over the spot where he'd first marked me all those months ago. Thank you. For what? For stumbling into my hotel room. For being brave enough to stay. For choosing me even when it was hard. His arms tightened around me. For making me believe in love again. I turned in his embrace to face him, this man who'd become my everything. Thank you for catching me when I fell. For seeing me as more than just an omega, more than just a conquest. For loving me enough to fight for us. Always, he promised and sealed it with a kiss. We stood there on the balcony, two people who shouldn't have worked on paper but had created something beautiful in reality. The CEO and the junior employee. The enigma and the omega. The older man and the young romantic. None of those labels mattered anymore. We were just Jung and Han. Husbands. Partners. Two halves of one whole. And as we went inside to begin our first night as a married couple, I sent up a silent thank you to whatever twist of fate had led me to the wrong hotel room and the right man. Sometimes the best love stories begin with the worst decisions. Sometimes the person who seems all wrong is actually perfect. And sometimes stumbling drunk into a stranger's arms is exactly where you're meant to be. Our story had started with heartbreak and desperation. But it had transformed into something beautiful. A love that was tested and proven true, a partnership built on respect and equality, a future filled with possibility. I'd wanted to forget my pain that night. Instead, I'd found my future. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it. The apartment was quiet when we finally returned home as husbands. The celebration had been perfect, but I was grateful for the silence, for this moment that was just ours. Jung closed the door behind us and leaned against it, watching me with those storm cloud eyes that still made my breath catch after 2 years together. His tie was loosened, his jacket discarded somewhere at the reception, and he looked more relaxed than I'd seen him all day. Come here, he said softly, extending his hand. I crossed the room to him, my heart racing despite the familiarity of his touch. There was something different about tonight, something profound in knowing that we were bound together now, not just by love but by vows spoken before everyone who mattered to us. His fingers threaded through mine as he pulled me close. My husband, he murmured, testing out the word. A slow smile spread across his face. I like the sound of that. So do I breathed, tilting my head up to meet his kiss. It started gentle, a soft press of lips, a quiet affirmation of what we'd promised each other today. But it deepened quickly, 2 years of passion and love and trust flowing between us. His hand cupped the back of my neck, angling my head just how he wanted it, and I melted into him like I always did. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing harder. Jung's pupils were dilated, dark with want, and I knew I must look the same. Bedroom, I whispered. He didn't need to be told twice. We made our way through the apartment we'd shared for over a year now, shedding clothes as we went. My jacket joined his somewhere in the hallway. Our ties disappeared. By the time we reached the bedroom, we were down to dress shirts and slacks, and even those didn't last long. Jung's hands were reverent as he undressed me, like he was unwrapping something precious. He'd seen me like this countless times, but tonight felt different. Sacred somehow. You're beautiful, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I'll never get tired of looking at you. Heat flooded through me, part arousal, part love for this man who still made me feel cherished every single day. Jung? I know. He guided me backward toward the bed, his hands never leaving my skin. I know, love. We fell onto the mattress together, a tangle of limbs and kisses and wandering hands. Jung's weight settled over me, familiar and perfect, and I wrapped my arms around him to pull him closer. I love you, I said against his mouth. My husband. He groaned at the word, his hips pressing against mine in a way that made us both gasp. Say it again. Husband, I whispered, then louder, my husband. His kiss turned fierce, claiming, and I gave myself over to it completely. This was what we'd both wanted from that very first night. Not just physical pleasure but this deep connection, this sense of belonging to each other. Jung's mouth left mine to trail down my neck, finding all the sensitive spots he'd memorized over 2 years of loving me. I arched into his touch, my fingers threading through his silver-streaked hair. I want you, I breathed. Please, Jung. Patience, he murmured against my skin, but his hands were already moving lower, touching me with a perfect combination of gentleness and possession that made my head spin. He took his time as he always did, building pleasure slowly and deliberately. His fingers worked expertly, preparing me with care even though we'd done this so many times before. Jung was always careful with me, always making sure I was ready, that I felt good. When he finally positioned himself at my entrance, we both paused, eyes locked on each other. "I love you, Han," he said, and there was such emotion in his voice that tears pricked at my eyes. "I love you too," I managed, and then he was pushing inside, filling me completely. We both gasped at the sensation. No matter how many times we came together like this, it always felt profound, this ultimate intimacy, this joining of our bodies that mirrored the joining of our lives. Jung started moving slowly, his length sliding in and out with a rhythm we'd perfected together. Each thrust sent sparks of pleasure through my body, building steadily toward something explosive. "More," I pleaded, my hands gripping his shoulders. "Please, more." He obliged, his pace increasing, his hips snapping against mine with more force. The pleasure intensified, waves of heat rolling through me with every movement. I could feel him so deeply, could feel the way our bodies fit together like they were made for this. "Look at me," Jung commanded, and I forced my eyes open to meet his gaze. "I want to see you." There was something almost overwhelming about maintaining eye contact like this, seeing the love and desire in his expression while experiencing such intense pleasure. It felt vulnerable and beautiful and absolutely right. His hand slipped between us, touching me in the way that always drove me wild. The dual sensation, his length inside me and his skilled fingers working my body, was almost too much. "Jung," I gasped, feeling myself getting close. "I'm going to." "I know, love. Let go. I've got you." That was all it took. The pleasure crested and broke over me like a wave, my whole body trembling with the intensity of it. I cried out his name, my fingers digging into his back, lost in sensation. Jung followed me over the edge moments later, his own release shuddering through him as he buried himself deep inside me. He groaned my name, my full name, Kim Han, like a prayer, his face buried in my neck. For several long moments we stayed like that, both of us breathing hard, hearts racing in sync. Then Jung carefully withdrew and rolled to the side, immediately pulling me into his arms. I nestled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat gradually slow. His fingers traced idle patterns on my skin, my shoulder, my arm, my hip, touching me like he couldn't quite believe I was real. "That was..." I started, then laughed softly because words felt inadequate. "Perfect," Jung finished for me. "Like you." "Romantic," I teased, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Only for you," he repeated what he'd said earlier, but this time it carried the weight of everything we'd just shared. We lay there in comfortable silence, the moonlight streaming through the windows, casting silver patterns across our skin. I felt utterly content, satisfied and loved, and exactly where I belonged. "What are you thinking?" Jung asked after a while, his voice drowsy. "I'm thinking about how far we've come. From that first night to this. All the obstacles we faced, all the people who said we wouldn't work." I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. "And how none of it mattered because we chose each other." His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with infinite tenderness. "Best choice I ever made." "Mine too." He pulled me down for a slow, deep kiss that somehow conveyed everything we felt for each other: gratitude, passion, commitment, love. When we broke apart, I settled back against his chest with a contented sigh. "Ready for round two?" Jung asked, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I laughed, tilting my head up to look at him. "Already? It's our wedding night. I plan to worship my husband thoroughly." His eyes darkened with renewed desire. "Unless you're too tired?" In response, I kissed him, pouring all my love and want into it. When I pulled back, we were both breathless again. "Never too tired for you," I promised. And as he rolled me onto my back and began loving me all over again, I sent up a silent thank you for that drunken night 2 years ago. For the wrong hotel room that led me to the right man. For every challenge that had made us stronger. For this life we'd built together. Jung was right, this was perfect. Not because everything had been easy, but because we'd fought for it. Because we'd chosen love over convention, courage over fear, and each other over everything else. As pleasure built between us again, as Jung whispered words of love and devotion against my skin, I knew with absolute certainty that I was home. This man, this moment, this love, it was everything I'd never known I needed and everything I'd never let go. "I love you," I breathed as we moved together, our bodies finding that perfect rhythm again. "I love you too, Han," Jung replied, and then there were no more words. Just us, loving each other completely, celebrating not just our wedding day but every day that had led us here and every day that would come after. Perfect. Absolutely perfect.